Hey guys, so welcome back. We are still in Unit 2, Humans versus Bacteria, and just continuing with our explain to slash elaborate. All right, so that should say slash elaborate. Now we know that if we are at our elaborate, that means that we have a performance test coming up very soon after this lesson. So this is going to kind of tie in a lot of what we've been learning as it pertains to the Black Death, right? And in our previous lesson, we spoke a lot about this protective variant of the ERAP2 gene. And we spoke about the trade-off, which is that it helps us to resist the Black Plague. We're twice more likely to survive it and pass on that protective variant to future offspring, right? Survive and reproduce, natural selection. However, we also learned that the cost of that is that we might be prone to some other autoimmune diseases such as Crohn's disease or rheumatoid arthritis. All right, so let's start wrapping up this 5E sequence on the Black Death. So our aim says, the how did the ERAP2 gene variant A protect some people from the Black Death? So do now says antibodies produced against one pathogen infecting the human body may not work against a different pathogen because antibodies are. Okay. So antibodies usually protect against one type of pathogen, but may not work against a different pathogen. But the question is why, right? And the best answer choice here that we should have seen is D. All right. Now it says specific for the shape of the proteins present on a particular pathogen. All right. And don't worry, we're going to deep dive into this a little bit more so that way it actually makes sense. Now, number two says when getting a vaccination, which substance is injected into the body? So we've all gotten vaccinations before: measles, mumps, rubella, polio vaccine. You might get the seasonal flu vaccine, right? So we have gotten vaccinations before. When we're talking about vaccinations, what is being injected into the body? And you might be surprised to know that the best answer choice here is actually C. It's a weakened form of the virus that they're trying to actually protect you from. So the virus is injected into your body. However, it's a weakened form. It's not anything that we expect to cause an infection because the virus is near dead. And just because the virus is near dead, it doesn't mean that our body is not going to respond to it how it normally would if it was, healthy and strong, and could cause an infection. So we would expect that our body would produce antibodies against this weakened form of the virus, even though it's not necessarily going to cause infection. That's what we're looking for whenever we're getting a vaccination. And now, number three says the diagram below shows a cell in the human body engulfing a bacterial cell. Now, the word engulf just means to consume or to take in, right? If I see that the bacterial cell is being engulfed by cell X, the best answer choice here is B. It's a white blood cell. And the reason why we know that is because white blood cells are part of the immune system, right? That helps to protect us. If it's engulfing this bacterial cell, it's only engulfing it for one reason, and that's to destroy it, right? So it's going to literally just kind of eat the bacteria so that way it can't multiply and cause a lot of infection inside of our body. Okay. So X equals a white blood cell. All right. And we'll just make the annotation here that white blood cells fight infections. All right. So let's read. So, as you just learned, ERAP2 is an example of a trait that you cannot see, but has been selected by the environment that we live in, right? So, this is talking about natural selection. It's been selected by the environment that we live in. There is a variant of this ERAP2 gene, which is we now know as variant A, that we inherited from the Neanderthals, right? So the Neanderthals are just another human-like organism that has existed thousands of years ago, but no longer exists today. That makes our immune system more effective in fighting both viral and bacterial infections. So this ERAP2 gene has been present in Neanderthals, and the ones that have variant A have an immune system that's more effective in fighting viral and bacterial infections inside of the body. And if they're more effective at fighting them, then that increases their chance to survive and increases their chances to reproduce and pass on this ERAP2 gene variant A to what we now have today. Let's continue. Over the course of the last 10,000 years, humans have been exposed to many infectious diseases, like the bacteria that caused the Black Death, right? Y. pestis. Humans carrying the ERAP2 variant A were more able to survive the viral or bacterial disease, survive, and pass the trait on to their offspring. But how does this ERAP2 protein work? All right. So all this is really talking about is those with ERAP2 variant A present in their genes have a selective advantage, right? Nature selected them to have the advantage to, you guessed it, survive and reproduce and pass it on to future offspring, right? Again, this is all nature cares about is your ability to survive and reproduce. So those people that have the variant A present in their genome are going to be able to resist bacterial and viral infections overall in the population more effectively. And so they're going to have the selective advantage of being able to pass it on to future offspring so that they too, in case they ever encounter certain deadly diseases, will be able to better resist it as well. And that's how the population survives as a whole. This is why natural selection really is only talking about the population as a whole, not the individual, if that makes sense. Okay. Now, ERAP2 synthesizes a protein, right? So this gene, ERAP2, synthesizes a protein, and to synthesize just means to make. All right. So ERAP2 synthesizes a protein that helps the immune system find the threat by presenting a piece of the pathogen to the immune system. To make an analogy, this ERAP2 variant is like a fast photographer. It takes quick picture of the pathogen and shows it to the immune system. Okay, so we have some new vocabulary here. We need to define, right? To synthesize just means to make, right? So this ERAP2 gene that's inside of our DNA is going to make a protein. And these proteins are basically going to be tattletales for our immune system to help us out, right? And it's going to just tattle to our immune system, hey, something doesn't belong here. And this is exactly what doesn't belong here. So please go and attack it, right? So that way it makes it a lot more difficult for the bacteria or the virus to hide. We're going to basically spill the beans on where it's hiding out and what we need to do in order to maintain homeostasis and kill them. So that's why the ERAP2 gene helps the fight in or against pathogens such as bacteria or viruses. So that way we can maintain homeostasis. Okay. All right. Moving along. So, how does the immune system work? So it says there are many different parts of the immune system. Some parts work to block pathogens, and some have a more complex role to fight pathogens inside of our bodies. Now, our directions say in the image, circle or underline which parts of the body you think prevent pathogens from entering and which parts fight infections that get inside. All right. So here's what we're going to do. If I'm using this kind of peachy red color, this is what's going to represent physical barriers, right? So we're fighting the fight externally. This is an external barrier. If we use this, whoops, this orangey yellow color, then we are talking about it fighting pathogens, fights pathogens internally. Okay, so if I highlight red, it's a physical barrier. If we highlight yellow, it is fighting it from the inside. So here's a depiction of the human immune system, not the entire thing, not every single part, but some of the major parts that help protect us from all of these fights or all of these different organisms that are constantly trying to cause disease. All right. And some of these you might actually be familiar with, or once we go over it, you'll definitely be familiar with them. So we start at the very top. It says mucous membranes in the nose and throat, right? So inside of our nose and inside of our throat, we have mucus. And I know, it might seem like it's really gross and really disgusting. And to some degree, you're right if you think that, but it serves a purpose. All right. Mucus serves a purpose, and mucus helps to literally trap dirt and any type of like filth that might be heading to the lungs that we don't want to be in the lungs, or might be heading into our digestive system that we don't want to be there. So our throat is going to have this thick mucus, and our nose is going to be lined with mucus as well to help trap dirt and bacteria and other pathogens that might enter our body, right? And if it's literally trapping it and physically trapping it, then this should be highlighted in red to let us know that it is indeed a physical barrier if we take a look at our little legend down here, right? So mucus is a physical barrier. It's like this liquid that helps to trap bacteria and other filth, dust particles uh, that might try to get in and cause havoc. Okay. Now, next is our lymph nodes, which are on the side of our necks. And if you've ever had like a parent or maybe the doctor, they feel like the side of your neck whenever you're not feeling too well, they're trying to see if your lymph nodes have swollen. If your lymph nodes have swollen, um, then it usually means that it is fighting an infection on the inside. All right, because your lymph nodes help produce certain types of white blood cells that help fight off pathogens as well. So we're going to highlight that in yellow because that's happening internally. It's not a physical barrier, it's something that's going on internally. The thymus is also an internal structure. It's also an internal structure. So the thymus is not fighting the fight um, externally, but rather internally. And its primary function is to produce T cells or T lymphocytes, which also help fight infections as well. Okay. Now, next is bone marrow. And you may have heard of bone marrow. If you crack open a chicken bone, you can literally see the bone marrow there. And if you ever wondered where do all of these red blood cells come from, it comes from bone marrow. But where do all of these white blood cells come from? It comes from bone marrow as well, right? Now our bones are literally inside of our body. That's not a physical barrier. It's literally lodged inside of our body, and bone marrow is lodged inside of our bones. So that's all, excuse me, also going to be yellow, right? It's literally producing red blood cells, which helps provide nutrients, oxygen, and well-needed materials around the body to release energy in the form of ATP through cellular respiration, as we learned about in Unit 1. And those white blood cells are no different. They also require their own set of nutrients, and the red blood cells are going to help them with that once they are produced. Okay. And next we have the spleen, which is also internal as well. All right. Now, the spleen also helps to produce immune cells, right? They produce other types of lymphocytes as well, which are white blood cells that help to fight as well. So that's going to be internal. All right. We have our bowels as well, right? So if you ever heard of like a bowel movement or something like that, we're talking about the intestines, more importantly, the small intestine. All right. And our bowels also contain immune cells that protect against infection and inflammation. All right. So inside of your small intestine, they also do produce some level of immunity as well. Okay. Now, next we have mucous membranes in the bladder and genitals. So we already agreed that anytime that we see mucous membranes or mucus, that is a physical barrier. And then finally, we have the largest organ of the entire body. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the skin is indeed an organ, and it is the largest physical barrier that we have as a form of protection to fight the good fight, right? Your skin covers literally all of your internal structures, and bacteria is constantly trying to bombard our skin, constantly trying to get through our skin, but our skin does an excellent job at making sure that it doesn't, right? And if it does happen to break through, then we have all of these internal structures that'll say, we're going to kill you if you come in, all right? All right, so let's move on. Now we can zoom in and look at some examples of immune cells to understand more about how they work inside the body to fight infections. All right, so number one says examine the images below, then predict the role the illustrated immune cell or molecule has in fighting a pathogen. Then direction two says use the text and the video, how your immune system works to revise your ideas. And I will connect this video in the description of this video here. All right, so if I just take a look at the first image, what are some initial predictions before reading the text on the immune system on the next page or something, right? So for me, I see an arrow, right, from this critter going to that cell. And that to me looks like a white blood cell. And the red uh, cell or red organism looks like something that the white blood cell is consuming. Well, that reminds me of number three of the do now, where we had a white blood cell literally engulfing a bacteria, right? It looks like the bacteria is being engulfed by the white blood cell. So that's what that reminds me of. So for me, I'm going to say my initial predictions are the white blood cell. And just like how we abbreviate red blood cell with RBC, we'll abbreviate white blood cell with WBC. Intakes consumes the pathogen. And so to me, the red looks like it's a pathogen. And then for me, once it's actually inside of the white blood cell, in order to kill it, it's probably going to use enzymes and other toxins to kill pathogen once inside. All right. And as per what we're talking about here, this looks like it's fighting internally. So attacks pathogen internally. That's what I have as my initial predictions. Now, if I look at the second picture, it doesn't look like anything is being consumed, but it does look like there's maybe a white blood cell that has like something on the surface of its membrane. Not really sure what those are on the surface of the membrane that's there. But it looks like whatever those structures are, it's making its way towards those pathogens and surrounding those pathogens. And for me, that reminds me of antibodies. So for my initial prediction, I just wrote, and again, you don't have to write down my predictions. What else do you predict? Because it doesn't mean that I'm right. Produces special proteins slash antibodies that attach, 'cause it looks like it's going to attach to the pathogen. But in my mind, the reason why it's attaching to the pathogen is to mark it or destroy it. That's the reason why I think it is. And I also noticed that these proteins or these structures have specific shapes. In this case, it looks like they're all Y shaped. But instead of it looking like it's attacking internally, it looks like it's attacking the pathogen externally, right? I don't see the white blood cell engulfing the pathogen or anything like that, like we see in the first one. I just literally see that it looks like it's kind of sending shooters to kind of get it. Okay. And then finally, in the last picture, it looks a lot like, I don't know, the second picture in certain ways. I see some of those structures that look like they're attaching to other outside structures, right? So these special proteins, right? And by like, I'm looking at this one that looks like it has like a more square shape. This one that looks like it has a more triangular shape and attachment. And this one that has a more circular shape. And it honestly just kind of looks like they have one specific one that's made to attach to a complementary shape on that pathogen in order to actually attach on, latch on, and possibly destroy it. But it looks like they have specific shapes. Okay. So, special proteins of various shapes create a network of links to aid in destruction of multiple pathogens. So in the second one, I see that these shapes are literally attaching to one pathogen at a time, right? But here, I see that they're attaching to multiple pathogens at a time. And it looks like it's creating like a network, a bed of links to almost kind of have strength in numbers. I'm gonna write that down. Strength in numbers, right? The more links that we have, the stronger we can fight off the infection. So that's usually like what I think, right? And just like in the second one, it looks like they might be um, tagging the pathogen to be marked for destruction. Okay. So that's what I see. All right. Now, the next column, revised explanations after reading the test. We have our initial predictions, but we're going to leave that column blank because we still have to continue on with the lesson, and then we can add on as need be. But let's read. Immune system text. The immune system is a complex and fascinating part of our body that keeps us constantly safe from all the pathogens we encounter. This includes bacteria, viruses, fungi, and other parasites. The immune system is composed of several organs, like the thymus and bone marrow, which we spoke about before, and bone marrow and the thymus are where immune cells are produced, and also the spleen, tonsils, and lymph nodes. That's just an overview of the immune system, right? Let's continue. The first line of defense are barriers that keep pathogens out, like skin and mucus, the jelly stuff in your nose, right? Kind of helps create boogers for you. Many of the strategies we use to avoid getting sick work by preventing pathogens from crossing our barriers, like washing our hands, avoiding sick people, and making sure food is safely cooked, right? So if we have to connect this back to the Black Plague, right? A lot of people lived in unsanitary conditions. They lacked adequate health care. They were throwing a lot of trash in the street that we read, right? So in those unsanitary conditions, we're not going to be able to prevent pathogens nearly as easily because it invites other vermin such as rats that carry the plague, that have the fleas that carry the plague, and then they can easily bite people or scratch people and insert that virus or that bacteria rather, why pest is inside of us, right? Not adequately washing our hands when we touch certain surfaces and then touching our food, we contaminate our food, we can get ourselves sick, right? People that are sick still being around them. Maybe we live in like an area where there's 10 people for a one bedroom apartment. If one person's sick, it's going to be a lot more people that get sick, right? That's that proximity that we were talking to as it related to disease transmission investigation that we saw. And then making sure food is safely cooked, right? Our food, like meats and even vegetables and stuff, they need to be washed thoroughly and meats need to be cooked thoroughly. Why? Because we need to make sure that it's cooked that way it kills any pathogens that might be living in there, right? We don't want a tapeworm accidentally getting inside of our intestines, and we don't want any mold or anything like that growing on our food or consuming that. All right. So we work a lot by preventing pathogens from crossing our barriers, right? Washing our hands is a good way. Brushing your teeth are another good way. All of those things help to reinforce those physical barriers. But let's continue. But if these barriers are breached, then the immune system kicks in and it is activated to fight off any pathogen that gets inside of your body. So, are our physical barriers, our skin, our mucus, our hair even, are any of those foolproof? No. Do pathogens still get inside of our body? Yes, they're very cunning creatures. They have multiple methods of being able to trick us or trick our skin, trick, our mucus, bypass those barriers to still get inside of our body and wreak havoc. However, once inside of our body, then our immune system, our white blood cells, our antibodies, all of those things are going to come together to do its best to defend you from the inside. All right. The immune system has several types of cells that patrol every single inch of your body, like your own personal army of soldiers, right? So we're talking about fighting the good fight. We have our own personal army of soldiers, all right? And that's going to be these white blood cells for us. So these are few of the immune cells that protect you. There's quite literally dozens of them, but these are just three of the special kinds that do. All right, so we have macrophages and phagocytes, a specialized group of cells that patrol your body. And when they detect the enemy, like a foreign substance from a virus, they engulf or eat it and destroy the pathogen. That reminds me a lot of image one of what I'm seeing, that it's engulfing. And also number three of the do now, it also says engulfing, which we annotated as consuming and taking in. All right, so we've encountered this before. Once they've engulfed the pathogen, they hold on to a piece of it called the antigen, which they show to the B cells to teach the B cells what the pathogen looks like. All right, so these macrophages and these phagocytes essentially engulf the bacteria, but they keep a piece of it, which is called an antigen, almost kind of like a trophy, if you will. And with that trophy, they're able to show the B cells, which we haven't spoken about yet, almost like a quick snapshot and say, hey, this is what it looks like. Now let's move on to what the B cells do once they're equipped with that information. These specialized cells produce antibodies. We've heard of antibodies before, but we might not know exactly what they are. Molecules that are secreted like arrows with flags that will cover the pathogen and make it visible to other cells so it can be destroyed, right? So it essentially latches on so that way immune cells know exactly where to go and destroy the pathogen. To do so, they look at the antigen presented by the macrophage, which is what we just spoke about, and build an antibody that matches it. Okay. And then finally, memory B cells. These cells retain information about prior infections and remember how to make antibodies to fight them. They help us stay immune to infections we have fought off before. This is often why you don't get sick by the same exact pathogen twice, because we have antibodies that stay inside of our body forever. And that's because of these memory B cells that are saying, we've seen you before. We don't have to take as long to fight you off. We've seen you before, and we're going to kill you because we have the equipment to do so, right? So even though these pathogens are very sneaky and they have different ways of breaching our security, we have different ways of taking care of those breaches. Long live the immune system. All right. Now we're going to just draw out what this looks like to us. And you can draw the way that makes sense for you. But if you wish to follow along with me, that's quite okay as well. So if I'm looking at macrophages and phagocytes, all right, I'm just going to draw a cartoon version of what this looks like to me. So these are my immune cells. Don't ask me why they look so evil, but I know they do. Okay. And this is basically saying we are hungry for some yummy pathogens, right? Because I know that they engulf and eat them and destroy the pathogen. So it's looking for those yummy pathogens. All right. Now, once it's consumed it, then the B cells. Let's take a look at these B cells. So we have one B cell here. They also look a little evil. We have another B cell here. And this B cell is saying, ready, aim, fire. Okay. And it's ready, aiming, and firing. The B cell here, which has these specific antibodies. That's what the green represents, is the antibodies. They're going to help fight off the pathogen. So I'm going to just draw what the pathogen looks like. It looks old and grumpy. I know. And then I'm going to just draw some antigens on the pathogen. in the shape of a triangle, right? And if we remember in our little reading here, it says that the macrophages, right, in this first function, it says that they hold on to a piece of it called the antigen. So after it engulfs it, these blue things are what it's going to hold on to that they find on the surface of these pathogens, right? This is how we identify pathogens. This is how our body identifies pathogens. And these antibodies that have that shape, they're going to be able to attach. Okay? They're going to be able to attach. And what is our pathogen saying as a result? Well, they're saying, uh-oh, I'm in trouble, right? Not happy. And while the B cells are holding it down, we have other cells, other immune cells that are going to come in from way back over there. And they're basically saying, on our way. All right, because they're going to come in and they're going to help fight the good fight. All right, now long-lived plasma cells, memory B cells. There's not much space to draw, but our memory B cells, right? Our memory B cells are going to have multiple different types of antibodies of different shapes. Come in. Okay. So just different shapes. Sorry, not being quiet. I'm just drawing. Right? So our memory B cells, they're going to essentially say, I remember you. I remember you. This time, it'll be much easier. And why is it saying that? Well, it memorized it. That's why they're called memory B cells. I've seen you before, so I can quickly kill you now that I'm equipped with all the different types of antibodies that I need to kill anything that comes back in here. All right. And while this is actually occurring, our pathogen more than likely mutated because it's trying to survive and reproduce. You guessed it, right? However, its antigens still match the antibodies that's attached to my memory B cells, right? So my memory B cells can attach and mark this pathogen for destruction in so many different ways. And what's this pathogen saying? Darn it. You are so quick and so smart. right? You are so quick and so smart. And why is it saying that to our memory B cell? That's because we remember you. You can't come inside of our immune system, our body, and wreak all that havoc and think nothing's going to happen to you. No way. Our body is going to destroy you. Okay? All right. So, how do antibodies work? So we've been talking about antibodies a lot, but how do they work? So antibodies are proteins that stick to the surface of pathogens, telling our cells to destroy them. Antibodies are highly specific, meaning the immune system has to make new antibodies for every new pathogen it encounters. So it's not like we can make antibodies for the flu and expect it to work against the COVID-19 virus. No, no, no. I need a specific one for the flu, then I need a specific one for the COVID-19 virus. And if both of those viruses mutate, then I'm going to need new antibodies for the new mutated versions as well. So that's what it means by being highly specific. Okay. Think lock and key. You need one key to one lock, and that's it. If the lock changes, the key has to change. Every pathogen has a unique or has unique proteins on its membrane called antigens, right? That's what we had drawn here. If you look at the blue, those are the antigens. It's on the surface of the pathogen. We'll make a little key. Whoa, that looks crazy, right? So this triangle equals antigen, right? It's on the surface of the pathogens, right? So if I circle this, you'll see that that's an antigen. That's a different type of antigen. That's a different type of antigen on the pathogen. Specific, okay? Let's continue. Antigens are like little personal IDs. Think of like your OSIS number. It's your personal ID. And each one is shaped differently. That's literally what we saw here, right? We see three different ones. They're all shaped differently. This is where the ERAP2 variant A comes in. Remember that? The protein encoded by ERAP2 helps immune cells learn exactly what the pathogen's antigens look like, right? So that ERAP2 protective variant, right, that helped increase the chances to survive and reproduce during the Black Plague, it's going to help take these snapshots of these antigens and show it to our immune system so our immune cells can learn what they need to know to destroy these pathogens. So the B cells can produce antibodies that match their shapes properly. The protein synthesized from ERAP2 variant A may be better at isolating and presenting the antigen or the Black Death than other variants, resulting in a more effective immune response rather in people carrying that gene. So having this ERAP2 seems to be very positive for humans because it's so efficient at saying, hey, this is exactly what the bad guy looks like. And if you see it, you need to destroy it. So our white blood cells are going to follow those instructions and say, okay, we'll make the machinery that we need in order to destroy it very effectively and increase the person's chance to survive and reproduce. That's what's going on. Okay. Now let's answer these three questions, and then we just have to go back to our revised explanations after the reading, and then we have wrapped up the Black Death. All right, and we're ready for our performance test. So, number one says, why are antibodies an important part of the immune response? Well, they attach to the antigen on the surface of the pathogen, making it difficult for pathogens to invade our cells. They also remember prior invaders to kill them more quickly if they encounter them in the future. Okay? Now it says name two types of physical barriers we have to keep pathogens from making us sick. So it says physical barriers, right? You can either go back here to answer this question. And for me, it looks like it's going to be our skin, which we've spoken about before. It's literally a physical barrier that covers our entire body, but also mucus, right? It physically traps the bacteria, right? And we have mucus in our eyes, we have mucus in our nose, all on the inside of our body. Now, what is the relationship between pathogens, antigens, and antibodies? So antigens, we know antigens serve as personal IDs found on the surface of pathogens. If you notice pathogen and antigen, they both end in gen. You can literally think of them as being the bad guys, right? They both share that part of their name together, so they're the bad guys. Okay? Right? And they serve as the personal IDs because that's what the immune system uses to detect them, right? B cells produce antibodies that attach to antigens found on the pathogens, of course, marking them for destruction, right? And one thing to remember is that we have one specific antibody for one specific antigen. And what do I mean by that? If you look here, all of these antibodies are green here, right? All of these are green, and they literally are able to fit around the antigen of the pathogen. Okay? All right. So now we just need to fill in our revised explanation after the reading. All right. So we have our initials and then we have our revised. So in our revised, right, we learn that in this image, the bacteria is indeed being engulfed here. And when we talk about them being engulfed here, we learn that these types of white blood cells are called macrophages, also known as phagocytes, right? And we know that they eat the pathogen They're fast responders, right? And they're the first immune cells to start fighting. All right. So it looks like we were right. They consume the pathogen and attacks, but it doesn't say anything about producing any toxins to help kill the pathogen or anything like that. So in that case, we could do a little bit better, but we saw that they were able to consume them. So I'm going to count that as a W for us. All right. Now, in the second one, we learned that there's two types of white blood cells specifically. So, well, not only two types, but two types that we learned about. We have T cells that destroy pathogens directly. B cells, which we spoke about, produce antibodies, right? And just for us to make sure that we have antibodies are specific proteins that block the antigen on the surface of pathogens to mark them for destruction. So we actually had that right. We have specific shapes, right? And we said that they mark it or destroy it and produce. So I said that's a W, but that's just me. And then last but not least, the last one, right? Antibodies that float around the body are incredibly precise and fast acting at destroying subsequent. Subsequent just means anything that comes after. Subsequent invasions from previous invaders. Okay. Now that we have all of these antibodies that were produced um, specifically to attack, they can attack a lot faster, right? And they can all like come together and really create like this network of this arsenal, almost like an army of ants. You know how one individual ant is minuscule, insignificant, but when they come together and they create such a network of ants, they're almost like a super organism. Same thing that's going on inside of our bodies. All right. So that was a lot of information, but that's okay. That's okay. You guys totally got this. You know, you want to make sure that you study. The important things that kept coming up are this ERAP2 variant A protective gene that increases one's chances to survive and reproduce when it comes to like finding bacteria or finding viruses. It helps our immune system. And we kept talking about, you know, pathogens, antigens, and antibodies. what the role of each one does, right? B cells, memory B cells. And the cool thing about antibodies, which I actually meant to mention, is that they stay in your body forever. So once you've created these antibodies, they stay in your body forever, right? This is part of the reason why if you've ever had chickenpox, you never really get chickenpox again because your body already has the antibodies to fight it off. It doesn't mean that the chickenpox virus doesn't exist anymore. It means that if it ever got inside of your body, the reason why you don't get sick is because you have antibodies to fight them already, because you've already fought it off once. That makes sense. Okay. All right, guys. So again, that was a lot, but prep for your performance task. Remember, we're still trying to figure out how can we prevent another cholera pandemic, right? How can we prevent that? There's been seven. Don't forget about cholera. That's the overarching question. All right, but we are done with the Black Death, and we've learned a lot about how the immune system has resisted the Black Death, how the immune system has not resisted the Black Death. We learned a lot about natural selection in this 5E sequence, so with the rock pocket mice and all of that. So that's going to be really important. All right. You guys are absolutely awesome. And our next 5E sequence is antibiotic resistance, which is probably my personal fave of this unit. Um, and yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Bye.